checking out some absolutely gorgeous Beauty of the Burst Les Paul standards from Gibson Custom. Now these are guitars that are based on vintage instruments that are shown in the Beauty of the Burst book. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. These Bursts are iconic guitars. They're highly sought after both by collectors and by players because the original vintage instruments are super rare. These original Les Paul standards with this cherry burst finish were made between 1958 up until they were discontinued around 1960, and only around 1,400 were made. We don't have an exact number because some of Gibson's production records were lost, but somewhere around 1,400. These instruments varied quite a bit through the years. There were different neck cars, for example. A 1958 neck is different from a 1959 neck is different from a 1960. But in addition to that, each of the vintage guitars were handmade, so there were variations among individual instruments even in a given year. Neck thickness, just the carve of the neck could be slightly different and so on because, again, each one was hand-carved. The finishes on the vintage guitars started out as cherry sunbursts when they were new, but through the years the finishes faded dramatically, resulting in honey bursts and tea bursts and different variations. Each one really looks different these days. And in fact, not just the top fades, but the back and the back of the neck as well. So each instrument has become truly individual. They're incredible guitars. Everything kind of came together on these instruments. The PAF pickups, the woods in the instrument, the manufacture of the instruments all came together to create a run of incredible instruments that again are so sought after by collectors and by players. And the prices on these vintage guitars have gone through the roof. They're incredibly expensive. Now, part of the reason why these instruments are so iconic is because of the players that adopted them through the years. Players like Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Peter Green, Duane Allman, Paul Kossoff, Billy Gibbons, Joe Walsh, but the man who really launched the interest in the Burst Les Paul standards was Eric Clapton. He played on John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton album in 1966. He created an amazing tone on that album, one that's been sought after ever since, and raised a lot of interest in Les Pauls. Now, through the years, they've continued to be of interest. In those days, they were just used guitars. Now, of course, they're vintage instruments and highly collectible. There's a lot of documentation on these instruments out there, but an important resource and just fun thing to check out for any fan of Les Pauls is the Beauty of the Burst book by Yoshihiko Awanade. Awanade went through and by serial number took photos of individual instruments, gave us descriptions of each one, had interviews with some of the owners, lots of specs and lots of data about these instruments. It's a fantastic read, both as just looking at the pictures and also from an educational standpoint. I highly recommend checking it out, and you can order it at Sweetwater.com. Now fast forward 50, 60 years or so, and Gibson Custom had the idea of recreating individual guitars from the book. They've released a variety of those through the years, but the current run is called the Beauty of the Burst guitars. They've taken individual serial numbered guitars from the book and recreated them, and Sweetwater is the #1 source for those Beauty of the Burst guitars. I've got 4 of them with me here today, as well as a special guitar we're going to be talking about a little bit later. Now on these Beauty of the Burst guitars, Gibson has gone through and examined every detail of the originals and tried to recreate them as accurately as possible. Now the top carve on these instruments is from Pearly Gates, a very famous burst owned by Billy Gibbons and used on the early ZZ Top albums. The neck carve is from a very famous Les Paul burst called Carmelita. It's a very specific 1959 Les Paul standard with a special neck carve and a very flamey top. On these Beauty of the Burst guitars, they've gone to such lengths as making the scale length slightly shorter so that it's historically accurate. So it's just a little bit shorter than a current production Les Paul guitar from Gibson. They've used true paper and oil caps from Lux. We've got unpotted custom bucker pickups, and the backs are one-piece mahogany. These are some of the only instruments being made by Gibson today that actually feature one-piece mahogany backs. And on top of that, they're really using the pinnacle of Gibson's wood selection to create these guitars. They're very special instruments. What I have here today is the guitar from page 40 in Beauty of the Burst. It's a prime example of how the original bursts would fade, and the book refers to this as a honey sunburst. It has a wide flame maple top. The neck was refinished when the guitar was restored, so it's not quite as faded. And an interesting feature is the double white PAF pickups. Those PAF pickups are so essential to the sound of a Les Paul standard from the late 50s and into 1960. It's a very open, surprisingly bright tone. What they were going after with those PAFs was to get a noiseless version of a P90. So the true PAFs from back in the day actually had a fairly bright sound, and it's a big part of how open and how rich and how articulate these instruments sound. Our next guitar comes from page 74 of Beauty of the Burst. And again, it's a legendary burst. It has a quarter sawn book match top with very heavy flame, and there's more than average fading on the back, which is an interesting feature. It also has one of those unique features that results from the handcrafting of those original guitars, and that's that it has a small heel where the neck joins the body. Our next guitar is found on page 138 of the Beauty of the Burst book. It's a honey burst, but a cool feature is that it retains some of that original cherry color. It really sets it apart. Something else that sets it apart is it has a factory original Bigsby tailpiece. Not a common feature on those original guitars from the late 50s and into 1960. Now the back on this guitar is not quite as faded as the front, which gives it a unique look, and it has a larger heel on the neck compared to the one, certainly the last guitar, but to other guitars as well. And again, that's a result of that handcrafting of the original vintage instruments. Our final guitar we're going to look at today is page 151. Now this is a 1960 Les Paul standard with a 59 style light T-burst finish. It has a book match top with wide flame, an interesting uncovered double white PAF at the bridge with a covered pickup at the neck. We have medium fading on the top, which retains some of that original cherry color in the finish. And the back of the neck is slightly more faded than the front of the guitar. Now these aren't the only Beauty of the Burst guitars we're stocking here at Sweetwater. We have many of them in stock. Head over to sweetwater.com and search for Gibson Custom Beauty of the Burst, and they'll pop right up there and you can look at the entire selection that's available. But I want to show you one more very special guitar. The guitar I'm holding and the instrument that I use to play all the musical examples in this video is a Gibson Custom Dealer Select 1959. Now this is a Beauty of the Burst guitar. It's based on one of the guitars in the book, but it features a faded cherry burst and it has some Sweetwater exclusive features. Because not only is Sweetwater in the Beauty of the Burst Dealer Select program, because of our tight relationship with Gibson, we've developed our own take on the 1959 Les Paul standard, and we've included our sugarbucker pickups, as well as Sweetwater hand-selected tops. So this guitar is inspired by one of the Beauty of the Burst guitars in the book. The Sweetwater exclusive sugarbuckers make a huge difference. Now these pickups are PAF style, but they're underwound, so they have lower output, and that gives them a more open top end, and they also feature Alnico 3 magnets. The custom buckers feature an Alnico 4, so again, a slightly different sound out of it. A little bit more open tone out of this. A big feature is the Sweetwater hand-selected tops. We've gone through and chosen exactly the wood that we want for the maple caps on these Les Paul standards. They're absolutely gorgeous. They're available in 6 different colors, so you can choose exactly the one that you want. I hope you've enjoyed this look at these absolutely gorgeous guitars. I highly recommend picking up the Beauty of the Burst book. You'll have a blast looking through it. And check out these guitars at sweetwater.com or give your Sweetwater sales engineer a call to learn all about them. Each one recreates an exact instrument from in the Beauty of the Burst book. They play fantastic, they sound even better, and they look so gorgeous. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.